All right. Good morning to those of you on the East Coast. Good morning also to those of you on the West Coast. I'm your host, Brandon Troy, also co-creator of Movers and Shakers Unlimited. And thanks so much for joining us wherever you're watching from. As you will know, every weekend we try to give you a rundown of the goings on in entertainment and pop culture, if you will, in our show known as This Week in Pop Culture, giving you the spark notes, the cliff notes of what happened in the past week. And of course, I'm not going to be alone in talking about these said topics. So without further ado, want to welcome my co-host, my partner in crime, Mr. Smillman Trueheart, aka Spills. What's going on, man?
What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? How's it going?
How's it
Um,
going?
we've had a great Christmas and Hanukkah and Kwanzaa starting up, so
Yeah,
everybody's doing
happy
good. I
holidays
hope
to
everybody
whatever
happy
you
holidays,
celebrate it,
everybody.
whatever holiday you guys celebrate. Um, just as Spillman was saying, and man, we did have a couple of things that happened in this past week. It's hard to believe that this is the last show of 2024, Spills. But we
It's
did have
crazy.
some things to talk about in the past week. But we also, as you can see in the title, have some things to talk about in terms of our top five for 2024. That being those things that you, the audience out there, responded the most to in terms of those said subjects and topics that we covered over this year. So excited to get into that. But of course, first we got to dive into some of the stories from this past week. So shall we dive in, Spills?
Let's get it.
All right, bet. So the first story that we wanted to get into deals with the world of sports. And we would be remiss, as we just said, we had Christmas over this past week. And of course, we had NBA Christmas. So we had that pastime of having Christmas games, NBA games on Christmas Day. And this year, Spillman, this year definitely did not disappoint in any shape or form. We had five games this past Christmas, and man, we had games in which we had some duels with some star players, and even out of all of those said games, a lot of them. If we're talking about just average of victory, I mean they were very close game. So just to give you a quick recap, we had the LA Lakers eke out a victory over the Warriors, 115 to 113. I know we're going to dive into that because I
We
know
will definitely
Skillman,
get into
I'm
that,
sure
ladies and
Skillman has
gentlemen.
something to say about that. But I digress. We had the Timberwolves seal a win over the Dallas Mavericks, 105 to 99. We had the Knicks survive the San Antonio Spurs, 117 to 114. The Sixers upsetting the Celtics, 118 to 114, and the Suns outlasting the Nuggets, 110 to 100. So, Spillman, what are your thoughts on the games that day?
I really enjoyed the games that day, although obviously this was a precocious um Christmas slate of games because of um the looming specter of the NFL. They had a lot of NFL games, so it's good that they actually competed and they did well from what I can see from the ratings.
Yeah,
Um, I really enjoyed the early game with Wemby in New York. It looked like the Spurs was going to win for a very long time, and then um, Cat and those boys really did what they needed to do to close out the game. He looks like he's going to be a star. I think that Wembanyama is possibly the future of the NBA. I think that obviously they have Joker and Giannis as their one and two, but it feels like it's Wemby's world. I saw he was playing chess in the park this week. That was very
yeah,
cool. You saw that? Did you see that? He was playing chess in the
yeah,
park. That was pretty
yeah.
cool.
That was cool.
Um, yeah, it was just a good game. Obviously, the primetime game is what we want to talk about. So, let's talk about the Sixers game. How did you feel about the Sixers game and the upset?
Um, I guess with that Sixers game, the Sixers have really been struggling all this year, and of course, we have Embiid that has really been struggling with his health and trying to be healthy this year. I'll be honest, I'm kind of done with the 76ers in that I'm kind of done with that storyline that we have with Embiid, and I understand, players get injured, but I feel like we're at a point in this era with Embiid and the 76ers that they need to start thinking about an era beyond Embiid and potentially trying to, because I mean, if memory serves, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Spillman, he just get like a like an insane contract and
I believe so.
and if we're talking about that said contract, the expectation when you're paying being paid, and we talked about this before in the show, when you're getting paid that insane amount of money, the nature of what contracts are these days versus what they are, 5, 10 years ago for NBA contracts are insane. And to tell me that you're getting paid that amount of money, and you're not producing for that team, and I mean, part of it is also the Sixers, the organization's fault for being willing to take that risk of paying that amount of money, considering if you're really looking over that stretch of time in which you've had Embiid and that percentage of games in which he's actually played versus those games that he hasn't. I feel like they're playing more towards how the lineup looks on paper versus the actual production that they're getting. Because I can say the same also for Paul George too. Of he's historically been unavailable, and been injured for a great deal of his career the last couple of years. And the fact that they took that risk of bringing on quote unquote a third scorer or third star, I feel like it was not the best decision on their part to take on Paul George as a contract and as their quote unquote third star. So, but that's how I feel on it. And speaking of the other games, I want to briefly dive into. I know we I want to prevent us from going off on a tangent, but I know you want to talk the incredible back and forth between LBJ and Steph in that game, and for all intents and purposes, it looked like the Warriors, were going to close that game out, and then you had some last minute heroics from Reeves. So, what are your thoughts on that game? Because at this point, a lot of times, I feel we kind of take for granted, you know, not just I'm sure you will get into with LBJ, but also with and when I say LBJ guys, I mean LeBron. I know for the
LeBron James. He's not talking about Lyndon Baines Johnson, ladies and gentlemen.
right. For those that don't understand that nickname that I give, my NBA folks know it, but maybe for your casual folks, you may not know it. But if we're talking about LeBron James and we're talking about Steph Curry, I feel like a lot of times we kind of, and as much as I joke about it a lot, he's still my number two in terms of all time. There's nothing wrong with that. I feel like we still take for granted how great those players are to still be playing at the level that they are, considering how many, how much mileage they have, so to speak, in terms of how much they've played in the league so far, and that they're still playing. They're at the tail ends of their careers, and they're still considered like our top 10 players in the league, which is insane.
Top 10 players in the league. That's what I would that it's just truly amazing to see them still playing at this advanced age at such a high level because I feel like they've really done the right things with their bodies. They're taking care of their bodies in the right way. You saw that roundtable with Steph, LeBron, and KD where they were all
Yeah,
talking.
yeah,
That was
yeah.
pretty cool. But it's like,
That was.
it's kind of like, hey man, this show is pretty much over now. Like, for guys in their late 30s, all the guys in the league that are in their late 30s, most of them in most sports are leaving. So it's just, it's a
Appreciate them guys while we have them now. Appreciate
yeah,
them
you
while
got to
we
give
have
them
them
their
now.
flowers while we have them. So, I think it was a great game. Obviously a tough bucket by Austin Reeves there at the end to steal it. Um, Very tough bucket. And that's why I like Austin Reeves. He's a bucket getter. He's a gamer, as they say. So I like that. Yeah, just good seeing the tete a tete. They still both of them got around 30. So, you know,
And I want
I,
to bring up. Oh, go ahead.
my cousin was like, when is he going to retire? I'm like, the man can still score 30. Both of them. They can still score 30. If I can score 30 in the league, the best 350 basketball players in the whole world, I could get 30 with my eyes closed anytime I wanted to. I would definitely do it. So, obviously they don't want to really hurt themselves out there. But some people, get carried off the court. I know I did. So
I hear
yeah,
you. I hear you. Sometimes you gotta put the shoes up, man. You
yeah,
gotta
you
put the
gotta walk away.
but I want to bring up something briefly that you talked a bit at the top when we were talking about this story, and that is the views of these games. And I have some thoughts on why that is, because I know the last couple of weeks we've been talking about how the views when it comes to the NBA have been on the decline, and we've provided reasons as to why that is. But I'll go into, and this is um, out of NBA.com. The NBA delivered its most watched Christmas Day in 5 years, averaging 5.25 million viewers per game in the U.S. across ABC, ESPN, ESPN2, Disney Plus, ESPN Plus, according to Nielsen Fast Nationals. Viewership was up 84% versus last year. Um, so I was just saying, just in general, I just find it, a little funny that we've been talking about the nature of the game, and our teams shooting too many threes, and load management, and how that is hurting the game. And look at that. If you have your star players play, if you have games that are competitive, people will watch. How about that? People will watch if the games are competitive and you actually have your star players playing in those said games.
Yeah,
Um, so things that folks already knew, we have confirmation of that with what transpired on Christmas Day with the games that were played on Christmas Day. So I just figure I go into that because I know so many times um, it seems so obvious that what is needed to keep the game at the level that it is in terms of interest. And the way that you do it is doing those things that are very obvious. Having your superstars play, having the superstars being willing to play, and having the players on each of the teams have effort in the games that they're playing. So I just figure I bring that up. I just found that interesting. That it's like, well, yeah, duh, of
yeah.
course.
But also, I feel like they had Wimby in the Garden. That was smart. They generally do that where they have a good young player playing against a Knicks team, and they start the day off with the Knicks team, and the Knicks team is a feisty team. You hear the crowd and stuff, and people like to see that. So I think that it was a lot more accessible. Also, it wasn't on a bunch of streaming networks or something. It was just on ABC. Just turn it on. It's on the TV. I feel like the ratings thing is a weird conversation because I'm not sure how they calculate that. Just like we're not sure how they calculate the Spotify thing. Like they could say you had a billion streams. Like, how do you know what a billion streams is equal to as far as ratings is equal to? Like, if it's not like TV's looking at it, like, I don't know. That just is an interesting concept. But yeah, for sure.
For sure, for sure. So switching gears, we did have some untimely passings, unfortunately, that transpired over this week. We had a character actor who passed away this week, including iconic sports announcer who passed away. But we'll start first with our with Mr. Evans. See if I can pull him up now. So as I said, first up we had character actor Art Evans, who was revealed to have died of diabetes last Saturday at the age of 82. Likely most recognized for his roles in Die Hard 2 and A Soldier Story. Evans has charted more than 120 film and television credits, and is survived by his wife Babe and his son Agade. I apologize if I'm butchering your name, Agade, but yes, Spillman, what are your thoughts on Evans passing?
Very sad to see him pass. I liked a lot of his stuff. I feel like this is for the elder millennials. I feel like we know him pretty well, but our younger millennials and our Gen Z fans that are watching, they don't know who this guy is. But I like his work. Definitely on Die Hard 2. He was very cool on Die Hard 2, which takes place here in the DMV. Don't forget that, ladies and
Yes,
gentlemen.
yes.
Takes
Well,
place at Dulles Airport.
technically, Dulles, but yes,
Well,
DC
Dulles is
metropolitan
technically
area.
DC. Dulles is
That's
technically
Virginia. That's Virginia. But
it's.
but I'm saying technically. I got you though.
I
DC
mean,
metropolitan area.
I
DC
mean,
metro area. I got you.
that's the up there airport. That's how you fly. I fly out whenever I go out the country. That's where I fly out of, sir. So, you know,
Oh, you get yeah, nah.
yeah. Whenever I'm like,
Maryland all the way. Maryland all the way.
oh, you are, yeah, okay, sure.
BWI all
But
the way.
yeah, no, he was very cool in those BWI all the way. I like BWI too, but I feel like the best one obviously is Reagan. The best one is Reagan. Everyone agrees
The
Reagan is the best
convenient
airport.
one is Reagan, but is it though? Because like
I
when we're
think so.
talking about no, because I like my nonstop flights, and based on my nonstop flights to places where I travel, I have to either do Dulles or BWI. Don't get me wrong, Reagan is convenient.
I feel
I
like the
like
good
it
flights
closer.
fly out of Reagan. They know to get us out of there. They'd be like, sure, you can get out of here to London. Yeah. You got to start
But go
flying the
ahead,
baller
go ahead.
places. But no, he was cool. I mean, obviously the tangent is the tangents. But no, I think he was a great actor. Really big in the 80s. Really big in the 80s. I really liked his stuff then.
For
Yeah,
sure, for sure.
yeah.
So I'll say this, and I know you mentioned that millennials may be the only ones like the older end of millennials may be the only ones who recognize him. I will challenge that because I know folks love their diehard franchise, and when we're talking about films that he is synonymous with, I just talked about Die Hard 2. Um, Shout out to Die Hard 2 because that was the first. I haven't talked about this on the show before. That was the very first rated R film I was allowed to see in theaters. I'm gonna age myself.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
but yeah, so yeah, Die Hard 2 is an important movie, a Hallmark movie for me, memory wise. Additionally, when we're just talking about just the films in and of itself, we mentioned Die Hard 2, we mentioned A Soldier Story. The Soldier Story, for those that do a lot of whether you're in English classes, I know a lot of times in English class,
Yeah.
even when we read the book, we watched the film in class. So like it is a film that a lot of people see in terms of their education. Um, when we're talking about that comparison between the book and the film adaptation, when we're talking about Die Hard 2, people love the Die Hard franchise. It is a timeless franchise. So, I feel people still recognize them from that. And then I would even go so far as to even comment on other genre related films that he was in. I didn't even mention outside of Die Hard 2 that he was in Fright Night. Fright Night is the classic.
That's a classic.
People still watch that to this day. Even folks younger than us watch that film, and it has developed a iconic status as a horror film. And he was a part of that. People forget this too, he was a part of Tales from the Hood as well, in that film. And I would just say, just in general, even though he may not have been the leading actor or actress in the said films, in some of the said films that he's a part of that people know him for, he was always a memorable part of it. And that's saying something, where when you have leading the lead actors and the lead actresses, and then you have your supporting cast to still be able to be memorable and stand out among those your said colleagues in that way, that's really saying something about your talent. So again, shout out to Art Evans, rest in peace. Again, gone at 82. Um, Now, as I mentioned before, we did have another passing that happened this said week, and that was with sports announcer Greg Gumbel. Um, just to dive into his unfortunate passing. It happened this past Friday, and it was announced that he lost his battle with cancer at the age of 78. Perhaps best known for his work at CBS, where he served as both a panel host and a play-by-play man throughout the years. He also spent time in his illustrious career with NBC, ESPN, MSG, and WFAN radio in New York City. Of course, he was a mainstay of CBS's March Madness coverage, working as a studio host. becoming synonymous with Selection Sunday, which a lot of people know where you have teams that are invited on the bubble into the NCAA tournament. And commenting on the death of Mr. Gumbel, his family had the following to say. I'll pull this up right now. Um, but yes, his family had the following to say when talking about Gumbel. Let me see if you guys have
There
it
you
up
go.
here.
You
You
good?
guys can see it. Okay. But yes, it is with profound sadness that we share the passing of our beloved husband and father, Greg Gumbel. He passed away peacefully, surrounded by much love after a courageous battle with cancer. Greg approached his illness like one would expect he would, with stoicism, grace, and positivity. He leaves behind a legacy of love, inspiration, and dedication to over 50 extraordinary years in the sports broadcast industry, and his iconic voice will never be forgotten. Greg's memory will forever be treasured by his family, dearest friends, colleagues, and all who loved him. Spillman, what are your thoughts on the passing of Greg Gumbel?
This is sad happening. Greg Gumbel obviously is one of the greats as far as black sportscasters.
Yes,
He and his brother obviously a great tandem in the world of sports announcing. Sad to see him go. Definitely the voice of March Madness for sure. Selection Sunday. I can hear his voice in my head right now. I'm sure you can too, as a big hoops fan.
yeah.
Um, obviously he lived a great life, so just sad to see him go. But I think he lived a full life. I'm sure he lived a full life. What would you say to that? What
So
say you?
yeah, I'll say this is we were talking about it's incredible belief, and I want to mention that again, and it was said in that comment of 50 years in the
Yeah,
sports
50.
broadcast industry. So I just want that to like sink in for a lot of people. That's half a century that you are in an industry, and to be able to not only cement yourself in that industry, to cement yourself across numerous sports. I know we were talking about NFL football, we were talking about college basketball.
Hmm.
And then people don't even talk about this part of it, of being a trailblazer as well. He was the first African American to announce a major championship sporting event um,
Yeah,
for what was that, Super Bowl 35. So, not only have that longevity in your career, but to also make history in that said industry, that just says a lot to what he accomplished and his talents in that industry. So I mean that's all I have to say. Where I mean they touched on it in that quote, but I just want to let that sink in. Like that's longer than either you or I have been alive. That you are working in
longer.
said industry.
I
So
think if you
that's
go back
incredible.
to 50 years, that's before Magic and Bird played a game in the NBA. That's before the careers of John Elway, Joe Montana, Jerry Rice. Muhammad Ali was still playing back then. Like that's a long time. A lot of great sports athletes have come through, and he's announced most of them.
Yeah,
So
for sure,
it's just
sure.
incredible.
It is. It is. So again, I want to send condolences to family and friends.
Oh,
Not
before we
only
get off of this
yes,
one,
yes.
who I feel like Greg and Bryant Gumbel are two of the best. Like the only two I could think of that's kind of close to them is Eli and Peyton. Like that's the only two I could think of that's like brothers and successful in sports. That's like up there with them.
I don't know. I don't know because like I think a lot of people sleep on this, but the Van Gundys, like if we're talking about them with coaching and
Yeah,
as broadcasters, like
yeah,
they've gone back and forth between coaching and being broadcasters. And I
yeah,
remember when Stan was broadcasting before he got into head coaching. So and vice versa. So I feel like we do have some other ones that are in there that you could bring up, but I mean you can't go wrong with the Gumbels though. Like
yeah,
as you said, they are iconic in terms of what they have done in the industry.
yeah.
Um, but that is a good thing to bring up, and maybe for you guys, if you guys drop it there in the comments of some brother duos or just legacies, because I mean, you could talk about the berries, all the berries
Yeah.
comes to
But the
basketball.
berries, no, the berries are kind of no, that's not even the
I
same
know, I know,
conversation.
I know. It's
Like
not. I
maybe
don't feel
you
like
could
the
do
same
Shannon
level.
Sharp, Shannon and Sterling Sharp. Yeah, yeah, balloons. Yeah, you could do maybe Shannon and Sharp, or who else are brothers like that? I can't think of any. I really can't think of any off the top of my head because usually, like, you can't do like the Atenta Kupo brothers because they're both like one of them good, one of them's bad.
Yeah,
So like you can't do
yeah,
that. Like you got to have the
yeah,
two brothers be good. So
yeah.
like
I
Greg was
feel
the
like,
sports guy, really, when you think about it. Greg was the sports guy, and then
yeah.
like
What about
Bryant
what
was
about the
like
Lopez? The Lopez's. I mean,
the
they're twins, but
Lopez's.
yeah, the Lopez's.
Kinda. I can give it to him. Like if the other Lopez brother was a chip winner, like if he was like a piece on a championship team, like Brooke is. If Robin was a piece, I would say yes, but I don't feel like Robin's
Or
a
the
piece anywhere.
Gasols. Like I know the
The
younger
Gasol
Gasol.
brothers is a good one.
Yeah, the Gasols. I mean, I know younger brother. Like he isn't placed at the same level as Powell, but I mean, I feel like that's
He
comparable.
won
Like
it. I
they're
won.
both.
I believe he won a Defensive Player of the Year award, and that's
He
pretty
did.
impressive
He did. Like I
for a
feel like they're
Euro.
comparable.
Yeah,
They're
I see
comparable.
that. I see that. That's for sure.
For sure, for sure. So, as I mentioned at the top, so again, condolences to family and friends of Art Evans as well as Greg Gumbel, passing away this week. But now is the time that we talked about at the top of the show, in which we're going to dive into our top five, as well as our memorable honorable mention. And the way that we were able to determine this was based on viewage across our social media. Well, not across our social media, but across our streaming platforms of us doing the show, and what you guys responded to. So just for the sake of time, we're not going to be doing top 10. We're going to be doing our honorable mention as well as our top five. And we actually have a special guest with us to be able to talk about our honorable mention and our top five. So without further ado, I'd like to
The drum
welcome
roll.
onto the show. Say again.
Oh, you can't hear it. The new
Oh,
things don't
okay.
pick up the stuff. Yeah, sure.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So without further ado, I want to welcome onto the show JP, Josh Pritchard Jr. What's going on, sir?
Good morning, everybody. Welcome all Federation starships in the Alpha, Beta, and Delta quadrants.
All right. So
How we
I
doing this
wanted to.
morning, everybody?
We're doing great. We're doing great, Josh. So I wanted to bring Josh on board because out of our top five and our honorable mention came super close to being number five, just by like a couple of views. But I still wanted to discuss it, which is talking about the world of Star Trek and what we had there, and what we had as our honorable mention specifically was from the last season of Star Trek Discovery. The breakdown that we did of season 5, episode 4 and 5. We did a double header episode for that said show for rediscovering the Federation. So I wanted to bring you on board, Josh, to kind of just reflect on those episodes and why you feel, even out of, because I know you guys do, we do multiple shows, different shows of Star Trek here, whether it's Lower Decks or whether it's Strange New Worlds. And out of the shows this year, that was the one that folks responded the most to. So I wanted to punt it over to you to reflect on why you feel that is out of the shows that you guys had this year.
Thanks, Brandon. Well, I'm going to be honest with you. I did have to go back and look and try to remember the order of these
Yes,
episodes. It's 404 and 405.
yes,
Um, okay, so I think with 404, that was an episode, just briefly describing it. In Discovery's quest to find the elements to the progenitors who basically created all and are attributed all the way back to Star Trek: The Next Generation for having created intelligent organic life in the galaxy.
Mm-hmm.
They come across a space anomaly, which leads to what we know as the Terran Empire universe, or the Dark Mirror universe, whichever you want to call it. And trapped in the event horizon of it is the that universe's version of the Enterprise, which, of course, if, fans who remember the episode Mirror Mirror was first seen there. So Michael and Book go on there, but also their two main antagonists, Mole and Ash, have shown up. And I think the big thing with that episode is when Ash is wounded, we discover that Ash is in fact a Breen. Just a quick explanation. The Breen were an adversarial race of the Federation that was first mentioned on Next Generation. Then we saw them often on Deep Space Nine. They were a species known for wearing these large helmets that resembled the helmet that Princess Leia wore in Return of the Jedi. Don't know why they got away with that, but basically the reason we saw them with helmets was because Michael Westmore, who was the makeup guy for Star Trek in those days, just didn't feel up to creating another iconic race at the time for some reason. So we finally got to see that. Unfortunately, I think some fans were upset because when you actually finally, after 30 years, we finally get to see what a Breen looks like. They just were green Jello people, and it was quite disappointing, I think, for a lot of people to see that. Now, episode 505 was really the best episode of this final season. In this season, it opens with Michael and her new first officer, Commander Rayner, who had previously been a Starfleet captain, but was having trouble adjusting to a post Orion Syndicate war environment, that he was not a guy ready for peace yet. And so she was kind of dressing him down. And then because of something that Mole had done, she had left behind a weapon that was apparently used during a thing called the Temporal Cold War. The Temporal Cold War, of course, is first mentioned in the first season of Star Trek Enterprise. And it's this event that's referred to as happening sometime in what we know as the 26th century between the Federation and its allies against various other races that are making temporal weapons that could disrupt time. And so Mole has planted one of these temporal weapons on Discovery. And so Michael, Rayner, and Paul, who pilots the ship when they go into their special drive where they bend space-time. That's not warp drive, that's just instantaneous drive. They get trapped in these series of temporal loops throughout Discovery's timeline going back to the early 23rd century. So they have to find a way out of this, and it brings back some characters that had been killed off in previous seasons. It also is like you're getting more development in Rayner's character, which is great. He's finally starting to fit into his role as being part of Discovery's crew and family. It was a terrifically done episode, just great acting and great script writing by everybody. And I think that's one reason why a lot of people were interested in it. Unfortunately, I have to say that I don't feel as though the writing of the rest of season 5 of Discovery was as even.
I was going to ask you that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't think it was. I mean, look, I am not one of the Discovery haters, okay? I think there's a lot to be... No, seriously. I really do feel like there was a lot that was good about Discovery. Mostly all the episodes that Jonathan Frakes directed, but it was a show that from the get-go had problems. And I'm going to be honest, and I'm not saying this because the haters just hated it because it wasn't Kirk and Spock, which has been a problem we've had since 1987 when Next Generation...
Josh, I was going to say, let me ask you this. Do you think that in dissecting, everything that you said, do you think that it has anything to do with that there was two questions. One, do you feel like there is, from what you're saying, that the season ended rather disappointingly, but do you think that is a circumstance of them having to wrap up the show quickly because they weren't anticipating that they were having to wrap up the show by that season? Or do you think that is just because they just didn't do a decent job of still working within those circumstances of trying to wrap up story arcs?
I mean, okay, look, if you're asking how I felt about the last 10 minutes, the final episode of Discovery, I like that part. I thought that was fine. I had no problem. I thought it was a great way to end it. There's one question: why was Discovery NCC A on it instead of it just, did they have to rebuild Discovery at some point between that last 10 minutes and the scene right before it?
Gotcha.
Good question. Would have liked to know that. I think they knew all along that it was only going to go 5 years. I think most TV shows now, it's a 5-year plan. It's not going to be The Simpsons, which is going to go 35 years. Or
and outlast. Hold on, you're muted, Spillman. And outlast your voice actors, right? Because now we're actually having the voice actors retire. The show is still going on. That's crazy.
Yeah.
But,
The Simpsons is still getting consistent ratings. So, it's not
but
something
football plays into it. That's very sneaky how they do it, though. That's very
right,
sneaky.
Exactly. And if you've been
like
watching football on Fox,
where's the remote?
You're just too lazy. The Simpsons comes on, and you're still watching it. No, it's still good. I mean, at times, it's still very good. Yeah. It's just, I think they knew that, they were coming to an end. As I said, Discovery had issues. I mean, there was a lot of hostility about the fact that, okay, you're creating a Star Trek show that takes place just a few years before Kirk becomes captain of the Enterprise. You're creating this character that was Spock's adopted sister we never heard of, even though I think they did explain why we'd never heard of her very well.
So shoehorning, like being able to shoehorn this whole other part of the lore that people weren't even familiar with. So this kind of shoehorn. I feel the same way about comic books, where you shoehorn things that happen. Oh well, this actually happened 20 years ago. This happened actually happened, and now it's canon. So.
Yeah, i.e. Silk, who I love, but her backstory just makes no sense, just in the greater context. But, okay, getting back to Star Trek Discovery. And, of course, has anybody heard me rant for the last 10 years almost, the fact that because of the licensing issues between CBS and Paramount, CBS did a very radical change on the look of the Klingons that I did not like. I was unhappy about. Yeah. But ultimately, because recently there's been a controversy the last couple of weeks since the last episode of Star Trek Lower Decks. There's been somebody's tried to explain that, is Discovery not actually in the prime time? No, it actually is. I mean, the USS Enterprise on Star Trek Strange New Worlds is the Enterprise that William Shatner Kirk, the 5-year mission, he's going to take command of that. It's just, they've upgraded the look, so it doesn't look it's just same thing. They've just upgraded the looks in a way that make it match up to what it would look like. I mean, we all, Star Trek fans, yes, we love the original set. But at the end of the day, it wasn't that set that made it great. It was the acting jobs of people like William Shatner and Leonard Nimoy and Nichelle Nichols and George Takei and Dee Kelly and Jimmy Doohan and Walter Koenig and all the rest. And all the great writing by people like Harlan Ellison and Gene Roddenberry and Robert Bloch and all the rest who made Star Trek what it is. Okay. Awesome. It's not what the bridge looks like. Anyway, I'm sorry I'm going off on a tangent here.
No, you're fine. You're fine. You're good.
We say that every week about this stuff. It's like, why do we keep getting contract shows instead of a show because somebody thought this was a good idea? Like, I feel like we've gotten totally away from that concept. This sounds like a good idea. Let's do this. This sounds like a good idea. It's interesting.
Right. Well, Spielman, the thing about Discovery is it was created as a show to get people to buy CBS All Access. Okay, that Les Moonves created CBS All Access. He was just milking Star Trek. He had canceled Star Trek Enterprise. He had shut down any Star Trek production until Paramount had sued to get the movie rights, and they made their movies, but had to make everything look different from his Moonves Star Trek because Moonves was trying to make money off the merchandise. And then finally somebody came to him and said, look, you want to make CBS All Access profitable? Create a Star Trek show because fans will watch it. Well, that had very mixed feelings. And I think after some of the starts with Discovery and then finally becoming a Star Trek show and then launching it 800 years into the future where it could start fresh with the same characters, I think that was a great idea. But then opening up the reality to this new line of Star Trek shows with Strange New Worlds, Lower Decks, Prodigy, and Picard, and now the streaming film Section 31, which I could talk about, but I won't get into right now.
Yeah,
we will be coming back here and talking about it, folks. We will be talking about it at some point.
We will.
Yes.
For sure.
But the problem is that, you had that, but now, this year we saw 3 Star Trek shows end, and Discovery, Prodigy, Lower Decks, and last year Picard ended. We still got Strange New Worlds. We've got Section 31, the movie coming up. We have 2 new shows apparently in the mix, Starfleet Academy, and one show which I don't think has been named, but it's Tawny Newsome will be right. Tawny Newsome is going to be involved in the writing of both Academy and this new show. And this new show is an animated comedy similar to Lower Decks. It takes place on a intergalactic resort planet. And we get to see life in the Star Trek universe beyond the United Federation of Planets. We get to see it from other people's perspective. And I'm excited about that because I'm not a Star Trek fan that feels like we have to reinvent the wheel every 5 years, that we have to have another Enterprise show. We have to have another space show about deep space exploration. Let's change it up. Let's do something new and fresh. And I'm excited about that.
So be on the lookout for that, guys, because we will be doing a lot more Star Trek. I wanted to be able to get into our top 5, but Josh, you're more than welcome to stay for what our top 5 is. If you do need a skedaddle, I understand too, but we're going to dive into our top 5. So number 5 that we have, and again, I want to give that shout out again for our honorable mention once again for Star Trek Discovery Season 5 episodes 4 and 5.
Does it do anything? No, it doesn't.
Number 5.
You did good there, Spillman.
Number 5 that you guys demonstrated to us that you guys showed interest in was the DC Black Film Festival. And just to kind of give you guys a recap of that, it was founded in 2017 by a good friend of mine, Kevin Sampson. The DC Black Film Festival, if you can, garner by its name, is dedicated to exhibiting quality film, web series, and television content by and about people of African descent. I want to say this past year was my second year, but just in terms of the mission that the festival stands for, it was very encouraging to be able to see that there was interest in the said festival, not only because it's in my home city of DC, of course, but also based on the mission that it stands for. I'll punt it over to either one of you. If you guys Spillman, I don't believe you've had an opportunity to go yet, and I know just based on travel for you, Josh, it's something that you'll probably have to actually dedicate an actual weekend to be able to do, in the same way that I sometimes head your way for the VA Film Festival. But I'm
gonna crash on your sofa.
Okay. But what are your thoughts on that in terms of this festival? As I said, this past year was its 8th year. Next year it will be going into its 9th year. Me personally, there have been some incredible films that have come out of it. Again, I want to send a shout out to friend Kevin, who's the founder and the festival director, of being able to make the selections that he has made, because I think you'll appreciate this, Josh, because I know we share this interest, is that even though it is a festival that is centered on representation for for people of color, in terms of the selections that we see out of this festival, it's not just dramas. He'll pepper in some horror films a lot of times. He'll pepper in some science fiction related content. So I'll punt it over to either of you, whoever would like to go for first, of some perspectives maybe on your respective ends on why you feel there was an interest. I have some ideas, but I'll punt it over to you guys first. Whoever would like to go first.
Well, if Spielman doesn't mind, I'd just like to say that I think that we need more African American and also Asian and Latino and Middle Eastern inclusion into our American fabric. And I think
Yes.
film festivals like this are an incredibly important piece. Just saying something about the sci-fi and horror aspects. Now, I don't think I've gotten to see any of these films. I would love to have a list of these films because I do love the sci-fi and horror genres.
Okay.
But because of writers like Octavia Butler and a lot of new African American writers that are following in her footsteps, her contribution to the genres of horror and science fiction cannot be underestimated. They were a brand new voice, and I am glad that there are people in film and literature that are following in those footsteps, because we need those new perspectives. Because as I was just saying about the Star Trek segment, we need new voices. Tawny Newsome, being the head writer for 2 Star Trek shows, is what Gene Roddenberry was talking about, this diversity. And diversity is a strength in America, and we need to stand up for that. So, Spielman.
Sure. Spillman.
Oh yeah, I couldn't. That was very eloquent. Good job on that. I think that I agree. Doing showcase for art of any kind is always good. I feel like we spend a lot of time also like trying to find things that are only driven by money, but like so I think that it's good that we have things that are artistically inclined and like put a spotlight on new ideas. So that's very good. I think this was a very good episode when we did this. So thanks to the fans for supporting this one. Do you have any thoughts on this one, Brandon?
Yeah, I do. I mean, all of you guys have both eloquently already, determined a lot of talking points that I would give, but I will continue on to a talking point that you gave, Spillman, and it's just that idea of, at the end of the day, it's called show business. And so I know a lot of times when we're talking about a lot of said projects, and whether it's trying to ensure diversity or anything else, an excuse that's commonly used is the idea of, oh, it won't put audiences in those seats to watch the
Hmm.
film. And we've seen time and time again where there are projects out there, if the project is is relevant and is something that has something to say, people are going to go see it. I mean, we've seen that demonstrated. Give me an example with Black Panther. When we have a film like Black Panther, it's a big budget superhero film, and 10 years ago, a film like that would have been like impossible to get made, or would have been unheard of to get made. But now, when we continue to demonstrate that, even in the face of, you want to make sure you ensure that there is diversity, but you also want to ensure, when you have that diversity, that you are creating something that is that folks can respond to, so that way we can continue to see more of it. Because at the end of the day, when studios can see that it's something that they can generate revenue from, regardless of what it is, that can't be used as an excuse as to why we don't see more of it. So
Yeah, and I just want to add, uh, both Black Panther and Black Panther: Wakanda Forever are 2 of the MCU's highest grossing films.
among
Oh
yep
yeah.
And this
among the
last year, when there was a guy, I forget his name, he was a big uh, money manager guy. He was trying to make a bid to take over a huge amount of Disney stock, and his reasoning was, oh, I don't like all these black superhero movies. Why do we have to have this? I don't want to see black superheroes. And that was his
Mhm.
whole thing. And so I'm not trying to get on a soapbox here this morning. I know this is the fun show, but I'm just going to say that I do feel
But I
like
got you.
diversity is under attack right now. And I think we have to support things like the DC Black Film Festival, not just the African American community in Washington D.C., but also, you know, just community as a whole. You
For
know,
sure.
Yeah.
it's time for liberals like me to put our liberal dollars where our liberal mouths are and support these things.
For
And
sure.
that's the only way they're going to grow, and that's the only way we're going to save diversity, folks. So
For sure. For sure. So that was our number 5, the DC recap that we did of the DC Black Film Festival from this year. Our number 4, and this should be interesting, JP, because I don't know if we've had you on the show to really talk sports, but
Oh yeah.
but this was our number 4, and that was the kickoff of the NBA 2024-2025 season. There were a lot of intriguing storylines going into this year's season that I feel played into the fact that there was so much interest in the start of this said season. But Spillman, I'm going to send you the assist, sir, as I normally do when we used to play ball. So share with me your thoughts on why that is.
I think that this is a year that it's been a good NBA year. I feel like a lot of things happened with the Olympics this summer. People were excited to see in the second year of Wembanyama, as we talked about earlier in the episode. We also have, like we said, Steph and LeBron are kind of getting towards the end of their career, so it's like really interesting. Yeah, really interesting to see. I think that this was a good year. I think that the Lakers being the first NBA Cup championship influenced people to watch that episode to hear me talk about how great the Lakers are with their
That's a
continued success in
dope.
in originating all things basketball. So, I
Sure.
just
Okay.
wanted to
All
make
right.
sure.
What about you, Josh? I'll
I
go with
okay.
you.
I am not as big a sports guy as I would like to be. I do understand the rules of the game of basketball, and I
Yeah.
do like to watch the Wizards when they come
Oh,
on
okay.
TV. I do like to root for the Wizards.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I'm going to date myself here. I remember
Date yourself.
LeBron's rookie year.
Oh
I
yeah.
Oh
am
yeah.
feeling so old right now, man.
Yeah, man.
You know what I'm thinking about? You know, every time Shaquille O'Neal comes on TV with some commercial,
Be
and I'm
like, who is this old
thinking,
man that looks like
man, he
Shaq?
just started his career. How does he look so old?
I'm
I
gonna
mean, I
really age
remember
you.
seeing him on 1993 when he just started, when he just got out of college and he was with the Magic. And I'm like, holy cow, man. He
Yeah.
doesn't look good at all. And then, of course, and then I had to remind myself, okay, he spent X number of years on the Lakers, won all these
Yeah.
NBA championships, one of the most honored players of all time.
Yes.
Steph Curry and LeBron James are also, they're already counting up all the point spreads, all the records. They are, they're going to go in there with, Walt Chamberlain and Michael Jordan and Magic and Kareem and just, yeah, everybody wants to kind of,
You're gonna be an ML
you're right. It's like we're
referee
coming
when it
into the
goes
last
over.
season here.
Yeah.
And there
It
are going to
feels
be
like
these
that.
young guys. We're going to have new characters to come on the court here very soon, coming up from all over the place. Not just in the NBA, but the WNBA. I'm glad that is getting the respect it deserves. So now, it's you do want to see how this is going to turn out. Who's going to get remembered
Who's
for
gonna take
which
the mantle?
scoring? Yeah,
For sure.
it's going to be the drama. So
Yeah. I mean, I'll say a lot of these things you guys have touched on thus far already, and just as you were saying, Spillman, there were some lingering storylines from the Olympics. just a couple of them is there was some speculation and it never really nothing really came of it. Is LBJ, so LeBron and Steph potentially joining forces based on how much their chemistry was demonstrated in the Olympics. That, you know, is that a possibility that they will carry that over to the season? We have the controversy with Jason Tatum and with Jaylen Brown of you know, Jason Tatum not getting enough playing time, and he was on the championship team. He was a star player of the NBA championship team with the Boston Celtics. You have Jaylen Brown, who won the MVP and he didn't even make the lineup for the Olympics. Like,
Yeah.
what?
Yeah.
And how they would respond this year, and man, have they responded this year of how they felt about being, you know, how they were treated in the Olympics, whether they didn't get enough playing time or didn't even make the team. And then I'll age you again, JP, and that's just the idea of Bronny joining the league,
Oh
of
yeah,
Bronny
that was
James
definitely it
joining the
too. I
league.
forgot
There was
about
a
that.
lot. There was a lot into that too, of you know, what would come of that. And then also JJ Redick being the coach of the LA Lakers, someone who has never, I mean, don't get me wrong, he was a former
They're in
pro, he
sixth
was a
place
former NBA
currently.
player.
Last I checked, they're in sixth place.
Yeah.
That's a
But
pretty good.
still, like,
Sixth
there
place
was
is better than
that's
11th.
there were a lot
yeah.
of memes and a lot of things going on with that of
Yeah.
him, like his experience. I think they made a joke of it, of what was his kids like grade school basketball team that he had
He
coached, but he had
was,
never
yeah,
coached
yeah.
a pro basketball team. And don't get me wrong, he's a
No, I'm
great
sorry. With
analyst.
the fifth seed right now, gentlemen, the fifth
Okay,
seed.
okay.
Okay.
Where are you guys? 10.
Well,
We
let
don't
me
talk
just
bad.
Yes,
say
Josh, go
this
ahead.
about
Sorry.
Revick is, you know, that he's coming into, you know, the most storied outside of the Boston Celtics, of course,
Yeah, for
the
sure.
most storied teams in American basketball, in world basketball. You know,
Yeah.
the Lakers, the team that's, like I said, had Shaq, had Kobe, had Magic, had Kareem, had Wilt. I mean, just everybody, Michael Jordan and Charles Barkley, okay, was
Yeah.
on that team. And it's gone to Hall of Famers. Also, side note, James Worthy, fellow Klingon from the LA Lakers, used to be in the Lakers, played Klingon in an episode of Star Trek. In
Oh,
case
he
anybody
did.
didn't know that, I just want to point that out. You know, yeah, he's coming in and he's filling some very big shoes because, I mean, let's face it, you know, nobody has ever filled Phil Jackson's shoes after he left Chicago.
Yep.
I mean, they've not done as well. And yet you had, even with all the Kobe and Shaq drama, Jackson was there and he led that team to so many championships. And
Well, I
he,
will say
5
this. I
titles.
will say this. Speaking of the Chicago Bulls, and then I'll wrap us up for number 4 is, a lot of people sleep on, and you'll appreciate this, Josh, when we're talking about like parallel universes and multiverse of what ifs, right?
Mhm.
We had
Here
a
we go.
what if post Jordan of the era of Derrick Rose, and that era in which he was playing, and Derrick Rose was like, he had an era there with his his rookie season and the year to follow, that he was that guy where a lot of people were thinking, okay, you know, we may see a new era for the Chicago Bulls. And unfortunately, you know, he had a tragic injury that, I mean, he continued to play in the league, but he was never really the same Derrick Rose prior to that injury. But before that, man, he was something to see.
Yeah, well,
So I will
no,
say that
it's
we have
tragic
had
when
some
anybody
errors
has an
with
injury
him.
like that gets, you know, that their career like that, they've devoted an entire lifetime, and then something like this happens, that takes that away from them, and you hate seeing that. Um, you know, and many teams have had that, but you know, that again, you have to, and I'm not trying to be critical, I'm not trying to throw crap on anybody. I'm just saying though, you have to get to a point where there's no I in team. I know that's cliche. The team
Yeah.
you have to have I mean, let's face it, Michael Jordan, as great as he was the first couple years he was in there, if he didn't have Scottie Pippen and Dennis Rodman and Luke Longley in there, it was not going to happen. Those
He
6
didn't win in
championship rings
Washington.
he
He for
got,
sure didn't win in Washington. Look, Brandon had to run, ladies and gentlemen.
I made him
Brandon had
run.
to run.
I ran him out of here. Spielman, it's just you and me now. It's just
That's
us.
right. Now it's our show.
Okay. Yeah, it's
That's
our
right.
show. All right, what do you got for number 3?
All right, number 3.
Number 3.
I think he's got the graphic, but he looks like he disappeared. But the number 3 is Little Rascals anniversary for some reason. I don't know why it's
Oh,
Little Rascals anniversary.
oh.
Uh,
Okay. I'm channeling Alfalfa.
oh yeah,
I
there you go.
am the barber of Seville.
There you go. There you go.
Oh
Oh
man.
man, that's so
God, I
good.
love that
As soon as
show.
you see that, he's a Michael Jordan fan. So whenever you start talking bad about Mike,
I wasn't
bringing
talking
up,
bad about Michael
but
Jordan. I love
he
Michael
said,
Jordan. I love Michael, but I'm just
but he
saying
could not
he
win
was
without
not
those
from
people.
Krypton, and
Yeah,
he couldn't do that without Pippen and Rodman. Okay, it's all I'm saying. All I ever said about Michael Jordan. Okay,
that's right, ladies and gentlemen.
I
Is he
said it.
back? Is he back? What's
Is he
up, Ray?
back?
How are you doing, bro?
You okay, Brandon? Come on, buddy. We love you.
Yeah,
Okay, let's keep talking about the
come on.
Rascals here for a second.
Yeah, so the Little Rascals. I don't even know how this is the top thing. That's pretty awesome that it
Mhm.
is.
I mean,
Um,
I think there's been one or two attempts to reboot the Rascals. I mean, because
yes,
the old shorts ran for years on
years
various
and
TV stations.
years.
Because I mean, it was like you
Yeah,
could squeeze 2 or 3 of the shorts into a 30-minute segment on television,
yeah,
and so generations knew about it even after all the actors grew up or died or whatever.
yeah.
We all knew those characters. I mean, probably more people could tell you who the name of the Little Rascals dog, Petey,
Yeah,
than they could tell you who was the president of the United States before Franklin Roosevelt. Okay,
right.
Herbert Hoover, but I'm a junkie for politics. But
You there? Can you guys
okay,
hear
All
me?
right, there we go.
can
Sorry,
He's
we
we
can
back,
hear
lost
ladies
you,
and
April. I
gentlemen.
Brandon?
lost a
Michael
second.
Jordan got him, ladies and gentlemen. He said, Michael Jordan, I'm out of here.
You
LeBron ain't
lost me
no
there for a
GOAT.
second. Go ahead.
LeBron's not the GOAT. LeBron is the GOAT. You saw it. You
Yeah.
saw it, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes,
LeBron used his superpowers to kick Brandon off the stream, ladies and gentlemen. You didn't know that he had that kind of powers. Once you start hating, his hairline starts to vibrate, and then he kicks the haters off the internet.
Yep.
Wow. How fitting. How fitting.
Yeah.
That's right.
But getting into our top 3 guys, so our number 4 again was the start of the 2024-2025 NBA season. The top 3 we're going to get into is something that I tried to make a habit of doing this year, and then I guess it was something that you guys, those of you out there watching, enjoyed a good deal of, and that is what we had with our anniversary shows. So the top 3 anniversary shows that we had made up the top 3 shows that we had for the year. Let me see if I can pull it up because it looked like it decided it wanted to freeze on me. See if I can get it up. But our number 3 that we had for 2024, see if I can get this up here for you guys, was a childhood film of ours, respectively, Spillman. So you'll appreciate this. Let me see if I can get it. Came out in 1994, and it's crazy to believe that it was the 30th anniversary this year, and that's none other than the Little Rascals, coming out in 1994. If you are familiar with this said IP, of course, when we're talking about the Little Rascals, is a show that, or I should say, it was adapted from adapted from the. Let me see. I'm trying to recall the show of old back in the 1920s, 1930s, and 1940s of the
Mhm.
show called Our Gang. But the 1994 version, of course, is iconic for many of us that were kids in the 90s. And I was fortunate enough to get one of the stars, Cortland Mead, who played in that 1994 version. I do have some ideas as to why a lot of people responded to it, but since I have both of you here, I will punt it over to either one of you to speculate as to why this ended up being our number 3 show all time in 2024.
Well, I think we were just starting to talk about the. I think we were talking about the old serials that they made that inspired the movie, but I think honestly you summed it up, Brandon. I think it's nostalgia for this particular movie. I mean, it was a cute movie. You had a lot of big name actors, just popping up in this who felt like they had a connection. Like you had George Wendt from Cheers was in it, and of
Yeah.
course there was a very famous scene from Cheers where the original Spanky, who was kind of the leader of the Rascals, uh, was in Cheers, and George Wendt recognized him. And so
Yeah.
having him show up in the movie was quite was quite a thing. Um, and like I said, it was the old Little Rascals shorts had been on television for my generation for decades. We were still watching those over and over again, like old
Sure.
cartoons. Um, I think honestly, for your generation, because you guys are much younger than I am, this is probably one of your first childhood movies that you saw. That you had this group of
It was
kids.
up there. Yeah.
Yeah, it was definitely up there, and you know, in some ways, this movie came out at a time period where there was a lot of these IPs that they were trying to revive, like the Brady Bunch movie.
Oh
Um,
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, and it's
the Flintstones movie.
the Flintstones. The first. I will go out on a limb here and say the first Brady Bunch movie was I really enjoyed a lot. Just the whole satire of okay, these people still exist, like they're living in the late '60s, early '70s, and all their neighbors kind of like, what the hell is the deal with these people? They have one bathroom in their house and there's no toilet in there and things like that. But getting back to the Rascals,
Bray.
morning, Ray. Okay,
Go ahead.
so
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
yeah, I think that like I said, it comes down to nostalgia to you younger folks. I mean, I thought the movie was quite cute at the time, and it's really interesting that so many people are, now that they in 2024 they wanted to celebrate the 30th anniversary of this film. That I'm guessing that a lot of the people like your age who now have children of their own have been sharing with their kids. So, I don't
Yeah.
know if that means
Yeah.
we're going to have another revival here in a few years or what, but yeah, there's just showing
Spillman.
that they have a lot of love for this.
Yeah, we got into it a little bit while you were gone, but yeah, definitely this was a classic. I think that this one was a pot one because we had the interview. Shout outs to him. I'll point to him right here, make it look cool. Boop, like that. Yeah, there you go. I just, I think that was a great movie. It was a good time. I feel like it was one of those white box VHSs with the thick, nice bubbly thing that they did on the kids' movies back then. I think it was one of
Oh,
those
right. I
kind of
forgot
movies.
about those.
I don't feel
Yeah.
like
A
we
lot of
talked
those
about it during
Disney
that.
movies did that.
Yeah, they came in
Yeah.
this special little case. The case was not the same as them tapes your
Yeah.
daddy used to watch. No, these are
Right.
different
Right.
tapes.
Right. Man, that takes me back.
Oh my.
Yeah. So yeah, definitely a classic.
Yeah.
For sure. For sure. I guess I would say the reason, and a lot of you guys have already touched on it, so I'll recap it pretty quickly, is the fact that it is a film that is uh I would say first is there was a lot of, I feel, and a lot of people don't say this, they don't admit to this, but I feel like it is a thing, is that there was curiosity surrounding me having one of the actors on the anniversary show, because so oftentimes, right, when we're talking about any of these projects where you have kids in it, and we're talking about kid actors, there is this fascination. I feel like this unhealthy. I feel like fascination of, did their career go sideways? Like, did things go sideways for them? And knowing and getting to know Cortland, because I had an opportunity to get to know him from moderating a panel of his at a convention, and then I had him on a show afterwards. But we were able, during that convention, to be able to, chat, briefly about his experiences as a child actor. For all intents and purposes, he is a rarity when it comes to a lot of child actors, in that he was relatively like unscathed in terms of things that normally befall a lot of child actors. And I think that's also because at a certain point, he made the decision for himself that he wasn't really keen to continue down that path of being an actor. These days, he's more of an entrepreneur and a businessman versus doing doing a lot of films. I mean, don't get me wrong. Obviously, since I ran into him at the festival, at the convention, that on occasion he'll do Comic-Con appearances and things like that. But in terms of actually doing new stuff, he's kind of hung up that part of his life, so to speak. And outside of that, he's real chill. He's real like laid back and down to earth. And that's not the norm of I hate to say, the stereotype that you get when you're talking about child actors and those that come across fame at an early age, and having to deal with not being a child star anymore and trying to make that progression into being an adult actor if they decide to continue that career. And so I think that was part of it. Even though no one will probably say that it is, I think that there's a fascination of him getting into that, which there really wasn't much for him to get into, because he's relatively, chill and didn't really get into a lot of that stuff. But I would also say, and you guys touched on it, is just that idea of, it is now, it's crazy to believe, it's now, we can say that it is a generational film now, because as you guys already pointed out, we have a film that many of us that were kids in the 90s grew up with, and now those of us that are kids now many of us have kids of our own and are now showing that same film, to our kids. Like, he even commented on, like, when he was preparing, when we were doing that show prior to that he had and he hadn't done it to that point, sat down with his kids to be able to watch that film before to like reflect on it, and to see that it was universal, because his kids enjoyed watching the film too, without even knowing that, or putting two and two together, that their dad was actually one of the Little Rascals. They didn't really put that together, but actually enjoyed the film still.
Can I just interject something before we move to the next one, Brandon?
Sure.
It's ironic that you talked about the life of child stars in the context of Little Rascals, because so many of the original Rascals had such difficulty in their lives afterwards.
Oh yeah.
I mean, they all of them got ripped off by their parents, I think. Buckwheat, the actors who played Buckwheat and Alfalfa, had very tragic lives. I mean, Alfalfa was murdered outside of a bar he owned, or that he worked at. I mean, he had trouble getting work for years. Darla didn't exactly have a good, I mean, Spanky kind of, he ended up eventually taking his parents to court, I think, to get some of his money back. But yeah, I'm glad you brought that part up, because being a child star is,
hard.
You could talk to Will Wheaton about it sometime, and how much, even though he loved being in Star Trek, and he made such a great friendships with Jonathan Frakes and Patrick Stewart and everybody else there, it was hard for him. He literally lost his whole childhood, and that's, he has a lot of anger at his parents over that. So, but yeah, no, I'm glad you mentioned that.
For sure. Spillman, did you have any thoughts before we hopped over to 2? I know you
Nope.
kind of pretty much said everything.
Yeah, I've said everything, but Otay.
All right, cool. Well said.
3 times a baby. I'm sorry. The
Well
channel getting
Oh
said.
herpy
no, hold
here.
on, wait a minute, wait a minute. This is a Lakers trade.
Uh-oh.
We got rid of
Uh-oh.
D'Lo. We
What?
got rid of
Oh, did
D'Lo.
he?
Oh,
Okay.
D'Lo's
Is
gone.
this the
Breaking news,
De'Aaron
ladies
Fox
and
trade?
gentlemen.
You got De'Aaron. Is this De'Aaron Fox?
Hold on, let's see. Let's see,
Well, while you're
ladies and
doing
gentlemen.
that, I'm gonna pull it up, and then we can interrupt our scheduled program once you have it. All right. But
Oh,
while Spillman is doing that, I wanted to pull up our number two. The number two that we had, and this is also again another anniversary show. It was the
Ooh.
30th anniversary of the Shawshank Redemption.
Ooh.
I was fortunate to
yeah,
have
that's
two
a
of the
good one.
stars. I was fortunate to have two of the stars on this 30th anniversary show, which you can see here on what you see up on the screen with Mark Rolston and Bill Sadler. Of course, the film adapted from the 1982 novella Rita Hayworth and Shawshank Redemption. It told the story of a banker convicted of murder and ends up forming a friendship over a quarter of a century with a hardened convict, while also maintaining his innocence and trying to remain hopeful through simple compassion in this time at the prison. So,
Brandon, I need to
yes,
mention something here that
yes,
happened
please.
last Sunday. Um,
Yes.
I was up in Maine visiting my sister and her half of the family, and
Okay.
we were going down Highway 1 because we were going to see some Christmas lights
Yes.
down the coast, and we drove past the area where the prison was that inspired Stephen King to write that story. It's not the prison that's in Ohio, the abandoned prison that's in Ohio that they actually used for the movie, but it was the original one that inspired the Shawshank Prison.
Okay.
And it's no longer there. They tore it down, obviously, some years ago, but there is a marker there that commemorates that prison was there, and that was the one that had inspired Stephen King to write the story.
All right. Excellent. Excellent.
Yeah.
All right,
So
just to get back before we start, Brendan. No, with
yes,
this
yes,
Lakers trade,
yes.
just this isn't breaking news, breaking news.
Yes, yes, yes. Go ahead.
All right, so the trade is D'Angelo Russell and Maxwell Lewis and 3 second-round picks were traded to the Brooklyn Nets for Dorian Finney-Smith and Shake Milton.
Oh, okay. That's kind of. I mean, it's interesting that they got rid of or I can see how they got rid of with D'Angelo, but I could have sworn that there was going to be a potential for them to get De'Aaron Fox. So I don't know.
They would have had to
I don't know how I
trade
feel
AR.
about
They
that.
weren't going to trade AR for De'Aaron Fox.
I don't know. I would say if De'Aaron Fox ends up going with the Spurs, because I know there's been
That's a
speculation about
problem.
that, that
That's a
would be
problem.
scary.
That's a
That would be
problem, ladies and
scary. Him
gentlemen.
and Wemby, that would be scary. But
Wow.
all right, getting back to what we had with the 30th um anniversary of Shawshank Redemption. I do have my thoughts as to why that is. I know Josh, you just touched on it now, but I'll put it over to you, Spellman, since Josh, gave the antidote there of what you feel played into the interest in this film. I have so many, but
My
I'll hand it over
theory,
to you.
my theory is this is the perfect I gotta fold a bunch of clothes movie. And it's like a movie that you'll sit with even through commercials. And that's really where it got its charm. I feel like putting it on like the TNT networks and stuff on Saturday afternoons or something when there's nothing really else on TV, but you're flipping around and then you see your old pal Red and everybody on the thing and they're buying cigarettes and they're playing baseball and they're telling the story of life, ladies and gentlemen. So I think that that is like just the charm of this movie. Obviously, it was adapted from a novella. It wasn't even a full like story. It's just like a little short thing,
Yeah.
and they turned it into this whole movie. It's just amazing.
Yeah, Shawshank, is so different from anything else that Stephen King is known for, because this is not
Yes,
a horror story. This is not.
not at all.
There are no ghosts. I mean, you do get the horrors of prison life, which is terrifying enough, but this is really a story about the triumph of a human will, of this character who has gone to prison for the wrong reasons
Mm-hmm.
and rediscovers himself and wants to be free. And the whole thing about how Morgan Freeman's character Red is watching this and he's seeing this, and it does make you very sympathetic for some of these people who, you know, probably were very guilty of actual crimes, but you
The
and they're
Birdman
exploited.
tried to stab somebody in the movie. He tried to shake him. Like they definitely show the shanking.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean and the brutality of the prison guards to the prisoners. I mean, it is not, you know, prison is horrible, and it does show that, yeah, there is no real. I mean, in that time period, yeah, they make a show trying to rehabilitate people, but it's not really rehabilitation. It's creating a cheap labor force at different points of the movie, but yeah, like I said, though, it's very different from what King had written. A lot of stories that King is known for, but it is arguably, I think, probably his overall one of his best written stories and one of his most iconic tales.
For
Um,
sure.
oh, definitely,
Sure.
and yeah, it's. I mean, it speaks to you on so many levels, and you care about these characters.
They really do have heart in this
You know,
movie. That's
you know,
definitely one
I,
thing.
I think as a writer myself, I think one of the most important things I can do with a character is to make you care about that, fall in love with that character, and be concerned about them. So when I do something really horrible to them later, you hate me for doing that to your favorite character, but this character made you follow them for 400 pages. And that was my point. You know, that was to get you in
For
the
sure.
door. Yeah.
For
So,
sure.
right.
So I would say this is you know, and this being in agreement with everything that you guys have said is I want to say I feel like the reason why there was an interest in this is that the rarity of, after all these years of getting those particular actors in this discussion in one place, getting, you know, Bill Sadler, getting Mark Rolston um, in the same, you know, conversation, because there is a rarity to that when we're talking about those set actors, because there is, outside of Tim Robbins and outside of Morgan Freeman, you could arguably say that it is very much just as you guys said, because there are characters that that you have empathy for, and that you that the screenplay gets you to connect with, that it is very much an ensemble piece, even outside of those two actors, where you have other characters within that prison that are memorable. And so to have those two characters, to have, you know, I want to say Sadler played Haywood, and to have Boggs, who was like despicable, like as a character, to have those two characters in there, was I think struck a lot of interest. And then I would also say I would also pair it with the idea of, if we're talking about just thematically what the film addresses and deals with, just that idea of hope, despite the circumstances that you're in, to still have hope despite your circumstances, because just that idea of prison can be attributed to any, if you're talking about anything thematically, can be attributed to any type of prison, literal or figurative. So to still be able to have hope in the despite your circumstances that you're placed in, it is still, regardless of the decade that we're in, is still something that speaks to people, regardless of the fact that it's 30 years ago. I'm sure it's still going to be the fact 40 years from now, 50 years from now, doesn't matter, because thematically it is something universal that people can connect with and associate with. The only other last thing I would say is, in talking about having those two specific actors, is it's always interesting to kind of get their inside baseball, so to speak, of what it was like to do that film. And a lot of times there were some things that they did share about working with certain actors and what it was like working with certain actors, for better or for worse. um, and I don't think it has been shared in other conversations that actors who have been a part of that project have shared thus far. So I would say, you know, I'll do a quick plug and say, check it out, because there are some things that they do share in there that are really fascinating if you have not seen it, for those of you out there. But yeah, I would say it was a combination of those things, just the rarity of having them, the inside baseball of their stories about working on the film, and then also thematically, just that idea of hope that the story is about. I feel, for me. So,
Yeah,
um,
honestly, I
but
think Brandon Spielman. I think that the Shawshank Redemption is going to be one of those movies you think of in terms of Patton or Casablanca or Dial M for Murder. One of those great iconic movies
Hmm.
that the critics are just going to think about for decades to come. I mean, we've been thinking about it for 30 years, and we'll think about it in at least another 30 more, I think.
Yeah, it's like a bowl of mama soup. It's like I made you this, baby. It's just like it's warm every time. It's warm every time. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
indeed. All right. So we are down to the moment of truth of our number one story. And again, I will hint that it is another anniversary show. So I will put it up here, see if it comes up. So our number one show was the 30th anniversary of none other than 1994, The Crow.
oh man.
I had um Ernie Hudson on the show to talk about the 30th anniversary of The Crow, of course, adapted from the comic book of the same name. There's so many things that I could say about this film, but I want to punt it over to either one of you guys to give your 2 cents of why you feel this ended up being our number one show this year.
Well, I think first of all, didn't you interviewed Ernie Ladd for this, didn't you?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, I
Okay.
had
That
him on the show.
Ernie Ladd is such a gentleman. Is such a gentleman. We know him from Ghostbusters. We know him from Hand That Rocks the Cradle. But this was one of his most iconic parts. Was playing the cop in this movie, and also, yes, it has been 30 years, but I don't think fans, comic book fans, martial arts fans have ever truly gotten over Brendan Lee's passing.
Oh
Yeah.
no, not at all.
No, I mean, that was a life that was cut so short. And sadly, I think tragically, it inspired some of these damn conspiracy theories that always annoy me about his passing and his father's passing some 20 years before that, about these curses and the Bruce Lee family. There's no such thing. This was a horrible, tragic accident. And certainly coming off of what we just had with the movie Rust,
Yeah.
this is once again inspired talk about the use of firearms on set. I mean, the fact that, okay, the director was lowballing it, and to save money, he sent the weapons armorer home so they didn't check the firearm to see that there was a shell still in one of the bullets. Why was there live ammunition? We don't know. Certainly afterwards, they had to custom make firearms, so like the barrels were too small for actual shells to pass out. But even with that, that wasn't safe enough to prevent what happened on Rust. But getting
Right.
back to it, it was the first superhero movie. I think in so many ways was the forerunner to what the MCU did 20 years later, or at least a decade later with their movies, because this was not, even though this was adapted from a comic movie, it's not shy about being a comic book movie. It didn't look as like ethereal as a Batman movie, where, okay, all the architecture was like out of some fantasy land. It looked like it could have really happened in a real American urban setting. And you had such a great
Sure.
talent of actors: Brendan Lee, Ernie Ladd, many others who were involved in this. And I've been meaning to rewatch it again recently. It is also the movie why I hate the wrestler Sting, because Sting felt like he had to copy the look of the Crow, and he stuck with this look, that he changed up his look. And I was like, dude, can you please stop ripping off the Crow? That
But
annoyed me. But
I
that's
will defend Sting in this one way. That gif of
okay.
him taking off his mask when he like it's got the mask underneath the mask is one of the greatest gifts of all time. Have you seen
Okay.
that gif? That's a great reaction gif where you're like, ah, ha, ha, I'm still me. Very good.
Yeah.
Uh,
Okay. Well, yeah. I mean
yeah.
that's cool, but I just that was something that kind of got on my nerves. But I love this movie for so many reasons.
Oh, yes.
It's you know, and obviously it did try to spawn sequels and a short-lived TV show, but without Brendan Lee, it just doesn't work. He was the Crow. That was his part. And they recently did a remake of the film, and it went nowhere. And I don't think it was because, people are superhero fatigue. No, I think that was just you're trying to remake again this role, and there was only one guy who could play it, and that role was pretty much written for Brendan Lee on
For
so many
sure.
levels.
For sure.
And
Sorry, I cut
sorry,
off there
okay,
for a
I'm gonna get
moment.
off my soapbox. And Spielman, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, what are your thoughts,
I
man?
think that The Crow obviously is a great film. I feel like it's not just a great film; it like touched the lexicon, just like you said with the wrestler Sting. It was a lot of guys in 1994, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9 who dressed like the Crow. It's like, hey, what's up with all the under eyes?
Yeah,
What's up
that
with all the under eye, buddy?
grunge, hard, yeah, yeah, that grunge
What are
era,
you
that dark
doing?
era, yeah.
So it was like a whole thing. Like everyone dressed like the Crow for a long time. So I feel like, and it was like a certain type of dude. You was like, oh no, he's a Crow dude. He's one of those Crow dudes. So I definitely agree that it was like it had its thumb on the lexicon. So I imagine that's why this episode was so popular with the fans, with our listeners. Because the Crow is just like you said, it's just such a classic thing. It's so classic that you can't be a fake wrestler making fun of it. Like you can't even be like, even though Sting was cool, I feel like Sting was forgettable before he was the Crow Sting. Crow Sting's the best Sting
Yeah.
because he would like pop up places, and that was very cool. Even though they stole that from Undertaker, but
Yeah,
we digress.
they did before that Sting, and when he was teaming with Ultimate Warrior and the Blade Runners, they
Hmm.
were a Road Warrior knockoff.
Yeah.
Okay, but I will just say one last thing I want to bring up here has a comic book guy.
Oh
Yes.
The
yeah, there was a
Crow
lot of comic
graphic
book
novel, the
Crow.
original one that the
Yeah.
movie is based off of, like Watchmen and like Dark Knight Returns, is still in print. They still print copies of it every year. People are still buying it in comic book shops. People come to comic book stores still looking for it. They've added updated artwork, extra stories, but yeah, people still buy the original graphic novel. It's still with us, and
Yeah.
I know that if the price ever dropped, I'm sure Marvel or DC would love to buy the Crow character and add it to their comic book lineup. But it's still, in my opinion, the best-selling indie comic book of all time. I mean, I have to look
And
at the numbers to be 100% sure. I
I
know
was
I
gonna
just
say that or Ninja Turtles, one of those two.
that or the original Ninja Turtles. It's a
That or Ninja
toss-up.
Turtles. I feel like it's a
Yes.
toss up between those two,
Thank you,
but
Spillman.
definitely
Yes.
they're
No, you
up there.
corrected me. I
They're
agree. It's
up
either
there.
one of those.
But they're
Okay.
both like again, they had their thumb on the pulse. They were both of those were definitely preaching to the choir. It's like, oh no, we like this for sure.
Yes. Yes.
so I
And
apologize. I got cut off there for a moment, but I'll
Uh-oh.
probably be remixing. No, I'm good now. I'll be probably remixing a couple of things that you guys said on my thought on it. Hopefully, there are some things that are new. I guess I'll say first is uh, my idea as to why so many people responded to it is that it is very much a cult classic. A lot of times when we're talking about cult classics, I feel that cult classics typically are those films where people didn't respond to it at a time. So I feel like it's a rare cult classic in that it still had
Like
an
that.
impact when it came out, but it still has a cult status later, because a lot of times when we're talking about a stereotypical or a cult classic in the normal sense, it's a film that at that time, audiences didn't really respond to it, and it took time for audiences to get around to appreciating it. And a good example of that would be something like The Thing, which is like my favorite film. So,
yeah.
but when we're
I will
talking about
I would just add to
yes,
that, Brendan. I worked in a movie
yeah,
theater the year that movie came out, and we sold out every night for about a month on that film, on The Crow.
Exactly. And to add to that, going into what you guys talked about already is the aesthetic, right? It was a trailblazer in that a lot of people don't appreciate this or know this at the time, or even looking back on it, that it was actually a comic book adaptation. It was a superhero film in technicality because it was adapted from a comic book, even though a lot of people, forget that or don't really, pay homage to that. And we wouldn't have, I feel like, our Nolan Batman trilogy without The Crow. There are a lot of
We
things
would not.
that I feel we have kind of that grounded, even though there are superhero elements, you have a lot of film noir aesthetic that is in this film in terms of the color palettes that are used. Um, when we're talking about, just like you guys were joking about, where we have it's very much of the '90s. When we're talking about that soundtrack, when we're talking about the goth scene, when we're talking about the grunge scene with music, like all of that was going on during that time. And then kind of going back to what I was talking about with Shawshank Redemption, there are some BTS stories that Ernie Hudson shares in this interview, where he talks about working closely, with Lee, with Brandon Lee, and where his headspace was, and what his aspirations were, and them talking about what he would do once The Crow was done, and what set to do, and his trajectory, and where he was headed, and all of that stuff. And it was very fascinating for him to be able to share that, because again, there I could be wrong. I could go back and see some other anniversary episodes with Hudson or other actors from the film, but I feel like there are some things there that I don't think has been shared before, in terms of what it was like doing that film, and his relationship with Brandon Lee. So definitely encourage, again, plug it one more plug it again. I apologize, but I'll plug it. Is, if you haven't seen it, be sure to check it out. Or yeah, like it was a fascinating listen, to be able to give him the floor, so to speak, and just him just sharing a lot of those stories. So there you guys have it. That is our top five for 2025. We had our memorable honorable mention with Star Trek Discovery, season 5, episodes 4 and 5. Want to thank Josh for chiming in, and being able to share his portion of our Movers and Shakers Unlimited universe with what he does with Star Trek. And I know Chris, who was here in spirit, he wasn't able to make it today. And then let me see, number 5, what we had with the DC Black Film Festival. Looking forward to do more things there, and do more content with them. Number 4, the start of the 2024-2025 NBA season. Number 3, the 30th anniversary of the Little Rascals with Cortland Mead. Number 2, the 30th anniversary with the Shawshank Redemption with Bill Sadler and Mark Rolston. And then finally, number 1, what we just shared, the 30th anniversary of The Crow with Ernie Hudson. So there you guys have it. There are some new things that are coming. I do promise that there are some anniversary shows that are coming in the new year. Actually, very soon. I will announce them soon. Super excited about those, because they will be going into anniversaries going into 2025, believe it or not. So be on the lookout for those. Those should be fun. And we do also have CES coming in the next week or so. So be on the lookout for that as well. I'll punt it over to you guys. Josh, can you tell folks where they can find you, sir?
Well, as always, you can find me at the Northern Virginia Star Trek Meetup Group. We are entering our 20th anniversary. It has one of the longest running meetup groups in the Northern Virginia area. So please come over to meetup.org and just look for Northern Virginia Star Trek Meetup Group. I'm also on Facebook as Josh Pritchett Jr. And you can contact me there, or tell me I'm wrong about something I said, whatever, no big deal. Look forward to hearing you. Spillman?
Spillman,
All
go
right,
for it.
ladies and gentlemen. You can catch me at Truly Spill on Instagram. That's where I am. I'll give you some fireworks because that's what we like to sizzle. Um, that's all I got going on. But I will say that this Christmas, I think I officially am over the hill because someone gave me a massage gun for Christmas that I enjoy getting. I was like, "Oh, I could really use this." Man,
Okay, nice. Congratulations.
man,
Enjoy it.
it's getting there, ladies and gentlemen. It's a whole new world.
Awesome, awesome. So again, I want to thank Josh and Spillman for coming on for this last show of 2024. Hard to believe. I'm your host, Brandon Troy, also host and co-creator of Movers and Shakers Unlimited. You can find me, what you see down below, at Brandon Troy ENT on X, and then of course Brandon Troy _ENT on Instagram. Thank you guys so much for watching. Be safe out there, and see you soon, guys. Bye.
Peace, hearts, hearts, hearts.